Good evening. This is the meeting of the joint committees of the representative town meeting of Fairfield, Connecticut. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So tonight we'll be hearing from a few people, and our first speaker is Mr. Barnhart from the Affordable Housing and Economic Development Department, giving us the Affordable Housing Report. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening. For the record, Mark Barnhart, I'm the Director of Community Economic Development. Can everyone hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm appearing tonight on behalf of the Affordable Housing Committee. I provide staff support to the Affordable Housing Committee and the Economic Development Commission. I'm joined this evening by Cindy Samarco, our Vice Chairperson. I would also like to extend regrets from Chairman Steve Grathwall, who was not able to join us this evening due to a scheduling conflict. So I've provided a copy of the report on behalf of the committee. All of you should have received that in your packet. I'll just touch on a few highlights and then answer any questions you might have. This included in your report is the status update in terms of the Housing Trust Fund, where we have a balance as of the end of December of roughly $560,000. Provided an update on where we stand in relation to applying for our first moratorium under Connecticut General Statutes 8-30G, as well as a progress update on the action steps that were identified in our affordable housing plan and the progress that's been made since that plan was adopted back in 2014. So this past year, the committee approved an allocation of.
They do that on voting day.
Sorry. The committee approved an allocation of $295,000 for the Housing Trust Fund to facilitate the purchase of 350 Quincy, to further the redevelopment of the former Navy housing site as an initial phase. The committee also worked with me and others to develop an application process and form so that both for-profit and nonprofit developers who might be interested in pursuing affordable housing development in town and are interested in seeking funding through the Housing Trust Fund, they have a formal process by which to do so. And more recently, the committee worked with Fair Plan and the Fairfield Senior Advocates to pass or prepare a text amendment to the Planning and Zoning Commission, which was recently approved to revise our zoning regulations as it relates to accessory dwelling units in town. The commission, Planning and Zoning Commission, just approved that at their last meeting. So it's been a fairly productive year for the committee. One of the things that the committee is looking forward to for the upcoming, or for this year rather, is updating the town's affordable housing plan, working with the Town Planning and Zoning Commission to incorporate recommendations as it relates to housing in their plan of conservation and development update. And so that work is about to begin. As part of that, there will be an extensive outreach and public engagement with that. So, Cindy, did I miss anything, or would you like to say anything further?
I think you're muted.
You're on mute, Cindy.
There you go.
Oh, okay, there we go. Sorry.
we've completed a number of things on the action plan this year, and I'm really I have to say that I'm very proud of the committee. Given the constraints we had with COVID, we were still able to meet and to accomplish a number of goals. We continue to move forward and have other things planned for this year. So I think, Mark, you pretty much gave a good overview of everything that we've done. So I don't think there's anything else really to add.
Sorry, I stole your thunder. I'm happy to answer questions rather. So I think Cindy and I would answer questions.
Are there any questions, folks?
I guess I have a question. I'm just trying to read. Sorry.
Can you identify yourself?
Hannah Gale, District 6.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just trying to look at this map that you have here on the types of affordable housing as of January. So it's pretty recent, and I am just confused by it because I'm looking at my own district, and I know that there's a lot more affordable housing in my area than what I'm seeing on this map. So I'm just wondering if you could explain the map.
Yeah, this is something that we were asked to prepare last year as part of follow-up to our annual report submission. These represent.
Mark, what page is that on? What page is it on?
It's the last page. It's actually not, I don't think it's numbered, but it follows the Affordable Housing Plan Progress Report.
Here, it looks like this.
It looks like this. Yeah. So this represents major affordable housing developments of some size. So it may not encompass all individual units that we have that are deed restricted properties. We do have an inventory of those that will that get reported to the state. But in terms of, we have, governmentally assisted, I think most people are familiar with that would be projects like Parish Court or Sullivan McKinney, or Pine Tree, the Fairfield Housing Authority projects on Pine Tree Lane or Trefoil Court. Deed restricted ownership, there are two major developments here. One is in the Greenfield Nordstrom Avenue, was referred to as sweat equity housing, which are townhome style development as a condominium project. And then the other one is the Navy housing site off of Reef Road. There are a couple other smaller projects, but those are the two major ownership projects. We do have a number of deed restricted rental housing in town. Mostly these are cooperative agreements with private property owners. One such as on Black Rock Turnpike, there's a mixed use development, 1838 Black Rock Turnpike, where you have retail on the first floor and a couple units of apartments above, and 6 of those units are deed restricted rental. These also include permanent supportive housing units owned and operated by Operation Hope. And then, the two areas that we focus more recently on are set aside developments, which are a fancy way of calling projects developed under Section 8-30G of the Connecticut General Statutes. More recently, we've seen a lot of activity in that regard. And then we also have what we refer to as inclusionary housing units, which there's a provision in our zoning regulations that was passed with the help of the Affordable Housing Committee that requires developments of some size, those that result in 10 or more housing units, to set aside at least 10% of those units as affordable rental, or affordable housing. So there are a couple projects like that, including around Fairfield Metro, the trademark developments. So I hope that answers your question. If we missed anything, let me know.
So
we certainly want to make sure we get them all.
Sorry. So those two yellow units at the, that that's at the bottom of the yellow 0614 area.
614, yeah.
Those are the trademark, and then the other unit that's next to it that's about to open.
Correct.
Okay, and is there anything that tells us how many units are in these that are designated Section 8, or what is the term? Is it deed restricted or no? What is the term when it's the set aside units?
Yeah, so we do track number of units as well as the points associated with them, and I can certainly provide a spreadsheet that we use for that purpose, and that might help further clarify that point. So you can look at each individual project and see both the number of units as well as the number of points associated with each one of them. So I'll make sure to send that out through the moderator.
Thank you. And I just have one more small question. Right near me, there are several buildings that have very low rent apartments in them. And I'm wondering if those are on the radar at all as affordable housing.
So, one of the
built recently.
So we do have, there's such a thing called naturally occurring affordable housing. Unfortunately, we don't get credit for any of those units in the eyes of the state. There'd have to be paired with a deed restriction or some kind of restrictive covenant in order for them to count in the eyes of the state towards our official inventory, if you will. So there are probably units in town where the rents would qualify otherwise as affordable, but unless they have a deed restriction in place, they won't actually count towards our total.
Is there, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be taking up your time, but is it possible to have a deed restriction applied with, to an already existing unit? Like, is it possible to approach the owner?
Yeah. Yes. We try to incentivize. I mean, the only way, because it's a binding restriction, so an owner would not enter into that unless there was some benefit being bestowed in return. So what we've done to incentivize that is we have a neighborhood revitalization program where we provide basically grants to landlord, non-owner occupied investment type properties. And we'll pay for, a new roof or a new heating system in exchange for a deed restriction so that we can count those units towards our inventory. But outside of that, I'm not sure, you'd have to do something to incentivize an owner to do that, to bind himself or herself.
That's great. Is there a list of potentials that could be approached in that way?
If you're aware of others, I mean, we send out periodically, go through the press, as well as a mailing to landlords or people that have investment properties in town, making them aware of the program. But we're certainly willing to act on referrals as well. So if you know of anyone who might be interested, we'd be happy to talk to them.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Representative Gerber.
Yeah, hi, Marks, Bill Gerber, District 2.
There you are.
I was having problems with my audio, and I'm not sure if you already talked about this, but I had a question for number 8 and number 9 on your progress report. And if you already touched on this, I'm sorry. The Todd zone density recommendation that you're making, is that like it? Outside of Todd, it's 30%, right? And what is the recommendation right now?
Yeah. This was a provision that the state at one point had established a program to encourage communities to establish what are known as incentive housing zones. And typically that's where at least 20% of these units would be you provide some additional density than otherwise allowed within your zoning regulations in exchange for 20% of the units being restricted as affordable. We do have some provisions like that in our existing regulations. Unfortunately, that's one of the things I think we'd like to further talk to the Planning and Zoning Commission about. But I think the underlying density is such that really no developer that I'm aware of has availed themselves of that provision in our regs. So while it exists, it's not really fully functional in terms of providing an alternative to somebody making an 830G application. So it is one of the things I think, while we have made some tweaks to it and we've marked it as completed, it's not really meeting the objective that we initially set out for in terms of providing a viable alternative to an 830G application. So that is something we want to revisit at some point.
Wait, so 830G is 30%, right?
Correct. And what it is, it's actually 15% at or below 80% of the area median income and 15% at or below 60% of the area median income. So there's kind of the two-tiered approach.
Right.
For a incentive housing zone, it's 20% at 80% or lower.
And I'm sorry, the 20% is a local reg or is that a state reg?
It's a local. It would be
right.
enacted locally. Yes.
Okay, so your recommendation is 20%.
Yeah, we have something on the books already that incentivizes people in exchange for that level of affordability, but it hasn't yielded any projects.
So what are you going to recommend? Like,
I think that would be. I'm sorry, that would be one of the things that we would work with the Planning and Zoning Commission as part of our affordable housing plan update to take another look at this.
Okay, you don't have a number in mind.
Other tweaks that we could make to make it more viable.
Okay. All right, thanks. And then the status of, can you just go into any more detail on number 9, like where you actually are and what you're thinking about the potential financing of deed restrictions? You just mentioned something about like maybe putting in units or some sort of repairs, but like, is there anything concrete yet?
Well, that program exists. So we provide grants currently to invest in their own properties in exchange for a deed restriction. There has been discussion more in the context of accessory dwelling units as to whether or not, again, we just enacted some changes to make it easier for people to create accessory dwelling units or accessory apartments. Is there another step beyond that whereby we might provide further incentives to allow people to do that or encourage people to do that in exchange for a deed restriction? That's one of the things that we've talked before. We've talked more broadly about, you have already provided abatements to nonprofit developers of affordable housing, whether that's Sullivan McKinney or Operation Hope. And in exchange for that, tax abatements or tax relief, we get a deed restriction that would count towards our affordable housing inventory. So, is it possible to consider something more broadly, such that we would, again, figure out ways in which we might be able to convert existing housing stock, provide that monetary incentive for people to enter into a deed restriction, such that we would count those units as affordable housing, to Representative Gale's point earlier. So,
but this says ongoing, but is there anything actually fleshed out yet that you're?
Well, I think it would be something that we would welcome the opportunity to work with this body. If there's a group within the RTM that's interested in this, we would welcome the opportunity to have further conversations and do a little bit more brainstorming around what might be possible. Because it would certainly be easier and quicker for us to take existing housing that already exists, and figure out ways to incentivize an owner to deed restrict the property such that it would count towards our inventory than to build new housing, which takes a period of time. So I think you know, again, we're getting very close to crossing the threshold needed for a moratorium. You know, maybe that might make sense, you know, to get the last couple points that we need to figure out other creative avenues by which we could do that without, you know, building more housing.
And are you considering standalone houses for this, or is it really only applicable to like units within like complexes? Or
No, it works. I think, you know, some of these things might work well with both single family and smaller rental properties, 2, 3, 4 family units.
Okay, thank you.
Larger developments.
And I guess my last question, I'm sorry to take so much time. My last question is, I actually didn't know that affordable housing that's not deed restricted is not counted as affordable housing. Do you have any insight on what is the rationale for that?
Well, there's really no practical way, I guess, in the eyes of the state, no practical way to count those units without some mechanism, some legal mechanism or recourse to do so. So I think that's why they insist that there be some restrictive covenant, deed restriction, you know, some agreement between the town developer, you know, that there be a record of some sort. So it's been long contested. I mean, there are a lot of communities that have a fairly sizable inventory of naturally occurring affordable housing, but that doesn't lift them over the threshold such that it would exempt them from 830G. So this has been discussed a lot, and, but no resolution on it. That's the best I can.
So even if you have a record of the rentals and you know it's, you know, meets the threshold for affordable housing for deed restrictions, you can't make the case that you're keeping track of the rentals for those properties and that they meet the definition, except for not being deed restricted.
Well, there's nothing that there would be nothing to bind the property owner to that. I mean, right now, you know, you'd have you know, Section 8, you have a contract that says you're going to only charge this much. So, you know, that's something you can kind of hang your hat on.
Okay, thank you.
If I can just add something quickly about the accessory dwelling units. I think the committee was more focused on working with RTM to get the amendment, the text amendment passed. That was just done on the 9th. That was last week. Another thing that we had discussed about doing with people who do give us a deed restriction is possibly offering them a loan that would be forgiven over a certain period of time in relation to the length of the deed restriction. So there has been a lot of discussion. We've come up with some ideas, and I think that's going to be one of our focuses this year. And we can also work with the Fair Plan and senior advocates to see what their input is and come up with a good plan, you know, for the development of the ADUs.
Thank you.
Can I just ask if everyone can mute? We've been hearing someone typing, and it's a little distracting. The next person who wants to speak is Representative McDermott.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Mark McDermott, District 7. Thank you, Mark. I actually just saw in the news the little blurb about the ADU in Fairfield on Channel 12. So it was interesting that was just on as we head into this meeting here tonight. As I look through the stats here, we've basically been treading water over the last 20 years from 2.71% to 2.47% where we are today. We have a 58.25 points gap right now. You're forecasting 503.5 points. What for the moratorium? How long do you think it's going to take to make up the gap that we have currently to qualify for the moratorium?
Yeah, it's a good question, and the issue that I see is that we're relying upon new housing construction to help plug that gap. And so we do have a number of projects that I've listed in progress that will help us attain that moratorium status. But some of those are just breaking ground right now. So, for example, 528 Black Rock Turnpike and 78 Umpqua Place are both 830G projects that were approved. We expect them to start construction in earnest in the spring. But a normal construction cycle is at least, I would think you're talking at least 12 months to complete that project before you get a CO, and that might be overly optimistic. So unless, based on what I see today with our inventory, we're making progress. But again, most of this is relying upon projects that are being constructed. And that's how you achieve some significant points. Some of these projects, yield quite a few points. But that's, I would say we're at least a year away. So I think we're going to be having this conversation, unfortunately, next year, and we'll be closer. Perhaps we'll be right at the threshold, but I think that's why we need to have options beyond just construction. We need to look at other ways in which we might be able to leverage our existing housing stock better. And so that might be a conversation with you all in terms of what else do we put on the table that might bring other folks to the table and capture some of these units that Representative Gale was referring to that are naturally occurring affordable housing, but they don't count because we don't have a deed restriction in place.
So how does the ADU work as far as becoming affordable housing? Does the homeowner have to deed restrict the entire property, or how does that work?
The homeowner has to enter into a deed restriction as it relates to the accessory dwelling unit, and for the overall inventory, that deed restriction has to be for at least a period of 10 years. There's an open question as to whether or not with the 10-year restriction it would count towards moratorium points. That issue has not been fully resolved at the state level. There's some ambiguity in the language, but obviously if those units would have to be restricted for 40 years like everything else, that would make it practically impossible, I would think, for many folks that are looking to create accessory apartments for their loved ones to enter into a 40-year deed restriction. That seems a little excessive.
Because I enter into that agreement and I then sell my home within 5 years, that deed restriction goes away and that falls off the list.
Yes, I mean, I think there needs to be. We haven't crafted the agreement yet, but Trumbull, just to mention one community has done this. Obviously, there needs to be a early opt-out provision. We do that with our neighborhood revitalization program. If a landlord enters into an agreement to deed restrict those units for 20 years, basically we provide funding and 1/20th comes off every year. So in year 10, if the owner of the property says, I don't want to participate in this program anymore, they just pay us back the balance that is due. But at the end of 20 years, it essentially reverts to a grant. So there are ways in which I think we could structure this, that we get the benefit, but also provide some flexibility for the owners as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Representative Georgiadis. Georgiadis, District 9. Hi, Mark. How are you?
Good.
Good. I might have missed this in the backup, but I had two questions. One is regarding the Navy housing in District 9 that I represent. Do you know if it's going to be did the sale go through? Is it going to be 2 unit, 3 unit? Do you have any idea?
Well, I've run the numbers more recently, and my best guess, short of again, there's ways in which you can finance these things, but if we're just looking at financing it through the sale of the units post development, I think we're going to need a 3-for-1 replacement. So they would be triplexes in lieu of the existing single family, be done as like a townhome style in a condominium development.
Okay, thank you. My second question, I remember going to a presentation a few years ago when one could go to presentations, and you were discussing doing like a mixed-use building, taking some of our existing stock, which is commercial, single-story commercial, and as encouraging people to do a residential second story.
Yep.
And I was wondering if there was any movement on that, if the owners of the commercial were interested, because I thought it was really, really interesting. I've been driving around looking at some of these single-story commercials that are adding to the top and wondering if they are turning residential or potentially affordable housing.
We are actually working with one commercial property owner that has expressed interest in our program and would convert the second floor office into residential units, which would make sense, again, given the market, and we'd probably yield 5 or 6 apartments, small apartments on the second floor.
So that's only one commercial entity. Have you been
There
actively
are
pursuing
others that are
these,
doing
or?
it, but this is just one that I know that is interested in actually making 50% of those units affordable so that we would be able to count them. But that we have seen other commercial projects here in town where they're looking at converting a second floor office to residential or building.
Or building a second floor, right?
Correct. To my knowledge.
Are you getting lots of positive feedback or no interest, or because it seems like you already have the base and you just, boom, have to go up, and they're not usually in neighborhoods that would have neighbors that might complain.
Yeah, I think the Housing Trust Fund will be the vehicle by which we might be able to do that. Currently we're using community development block grant funds for that purpose, and we, it's fairly straightforward in terms of converting existing space from commercial to residential. You can use CDBG dollars for that. Constructing new housing is generally precluded by CDBG. That's why the Housing Trust Fund is a good vehicle by which. But I'm happy to have a conversation with anyone that's interested in doing that. It does make sense, and I think again that's a way in which we could use our limited resources to help a property owner accomplish their objectives and at the same time meet a public need.
Is there anyone who goes through the grand list, looks at commercial properties, identifies properties that could be, no, not
I don't know of anyone that does that comprehensively. I wish I had time, but no, I don't. But if you know of anyone or a project, or you think there's an opportunity somewhere, I'm happy to have that conversation with anyone.
Okay, I'll reach out to you separately. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Representative Pastilli.
Sharon Pastilli, District 3. Hi, Mark. So I had a question, and it's, affordability with a small a as opposed to a capital A.
Right.
So my house actually has an ADU on it, and I would not have been able to stay in town without it. Because at the time that we moved, we ended up having like a ton of medical bills. I had 2 kids in daycare, and having an ADU really enabled me to stay in town. I'm not utilizing it currently, but we did for like 10 years. So my question is have we thought about, I didn't get a chance to listen to the TPZ meeting from last week yet, but it seems like there's an affordability issue on both sides of the equation, because you have an income stream for people who might not be able to stay in town, who are owners, where an ADU might make the town more affordable for them as well. and then we have a deed restricted unit that we would derive from it. So do we have an idea for approaching those owners for which, you know, affording to stay here might otherwise not be an option, but once they have the ADU, you know, the chance to construct an ADU, then they too can stay in town.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. And I think that was one that the Affordable Housing Committee wanted to make sure that the Planning and Zoning Commission understood there is, you know, benefit to having accessory dwelling units, whether or not they're deed restricted or not, for exactly the reasons you spoke of. They do provide a level of affordability, regardless of whether they count officially towards our inventory. It's an important aspect to them. I think, you know, with the passage, the recent enactment of these changes, it does make it a little easier for folks to create accessory dwelling units. One of the most important reforms was to eliminate the 5-year waiting period for the creation of accessory dwelling units, and allowing some detached structures to serve as accessory dwelling units, kind of as a pilot initiative. So I think there's a whole public information component associated with that. And that's one of the things the committee will be working on. Like Ridgefield, they developed a pamphlet that provided, you know, kind of a quick tutorial about accessory dwelling units, how to go about creating them and what types of resources are available for folks. And I think that public component, public information component, is an important one to help spread the word, to make sure people understand this is an opportunity that they might be able to take advantage of for exactly the reasons you spoke of.
And we can certainly keep you in the loop if you'd like about the progress.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? I think not. Thank you very much for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
As
I
you can tell,
appreciate
Thank
your
you.
attention to it. Thank you.
Lots of
Yeah.
interest in this, as you can see.
Yep.
Thanks.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay. Good night. Our next item is the senior bus grant. Ms. DeMarco, are you on? I think I saw you, Julie. You may be muted. Julie? Maybe she's having technical issues. I do see that she's on the call. Maybe we'll move to the next item and come back to Julie. The next item is the WPCA projects, and I see Mr. Norton is on the call. Can you give us an overview of this, sir?
Yeah, yes, there's, can you hear me all right?
Yes. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, there are three projects, three separate projects before you. So the first one is the Microgrid project.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a project that's going to incorporate electricity through our property, the fire academy, the conservation, and the animal shelter in case of a extensive power outage. It'll put us almost into like an island mode where we'll be self-sufficient for upwards of 30 days. Most of the infrastructure is in place. We have a couple of other areas. We have a couple of trenches and a switchgear pad that needs to be dug. And unfortunately, the areas that needs to be dug has come back contaminated with PCBs. So we need to go ahead and monitor that area and get rid of those soils. So this proposal before you is to, for a licensed professional environmentalist to oversee the operation, and also for the contractor that's on site to take care of the PCB contaminated soil.
Thank you. And this is for the 115,000? Is that the item?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. So first, does anyone have any questions on that item, that project? don't see anybody. If you do, you can come back. We have two more with Mr. Norton. So, Representative McCormick has a question.
Yes, Representative McCormick, District 2. Just quick, the PCB source, if you could just, this may have been discussed previously, but if you could just refresh me on what we believe the source of the PCBs is, if known.
It's historical. It was fill at some point. We don't know historically when it was put in place, what the origins of it was. We just know that we've hit levels of contamination that needs to be taken care of.
And just as a follow-up to that, there's no reason to believe that this PCB residue that's there is directly related to the fill pile issues that we faced over the past year and a half or so, or more?
No, there's two different types of contamination. One is not indicative of the other.
So the answer to my question is that we don't believe that these are affiliated in any way, shape, or form with the existing fill pile problems that we're experiencing, right?
Correct.
Thank you.
Representative McDermott.
Yes, Mark McDermott. Thank you, Madam Moderator. Mark McDermott, District 7. I believe in one of the previous presentations, we were told the contamination was due to the fact that this was a former Nike missile site. And that's where the contamination is coming from and has historically been there. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Representative Georgiadis.
Hi, Drew Georgiadis, District 9. I have a question. Are there any state grants that we can use for historic, if this is a missile site, which obviously was nothing to do with the town, any state grants that we can tap into to help us defray the $115,000? I think the missile site was from 1938, if my memory corrects me, from all those fill pile meetings I went to starting in 2016.
The Microgrid project is almost 100% grant. This is just a little bit that's left to do that we have to complete. So I'm not sure we're eligible for any other kind of grants that I'm aware of.
Could you look into that quickly and just throw me an email or notify the moderator, just because it has to do with environmental, it might fall into like a brownfield kind of remediation grant or something along those lines from DEEP?
I can certainly find that out.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Would you like to address the next item? This is the $53,595 grant fund request.
Yes. As part of Superstorm Sandy, the town received some grant money to replace a few generators throughout the town. One was at the Real River Pump Station, and another one was at the treatment plant. We were successful in acquiring grants to replace these generators. So the generator we're replacing now is a diesel generator with a natural gas generator. So initially we were going to put in the natural gas generator and run a line to the existing gas line. Once the project was looked at the gas company, there was not enough volume in the gas line to supply this generator along with the fuel cell, the dewatering building heat system, the administration building heat system, and the influent building heat system. So we anticipated them running a new gas line from the road, from our main gate to the generator, which was roughly 400 feet. So we did environmental testing of that trench, and that came back clean. So we were really relieved with that. But when the gas company came to us, they want to run a whole new line from the road all the way to our influent building, so that it accommodate all of those buildings I just went over, so they could do it all in one shot. With that, we would have to do another 300 feet of additional environmental testing. And that was the proposal from Ty and Bond for the 18400. And for the gas company to run their line, that was the additional 35,191.38. And that was the ask for the 53,595 to do that work.
Thank you. Are there any questions about this item? Representative Georgiadis.
Drew Georgiadis, District 9. Living in the beach area, the gas company has been replacing all of our lines at no cost to the residents. Why do you have to pay for the gas line? Why does the town have to pay for it if all the residents are getting it for free?
We do not use the volume of gas all the time. This would just be on an emergency case for the generator. So as homeowners and residents with new gas, you're using that gas. That's how they recoup their monies on running this large line and not using that generator consistently for that long a time, other than emergencies and during natural disasters such as hurricanes and things of that nature. They really don't have an avenue of recovering their funds as much as they do through residencies.
So I already had gas, and they still ran the line, and they've been ripping up all the streets in my district, and everyone has been inconvenienced. And just because they want to give us larger pipes so that we can use more gas, and it's all about fossil fuel footprint. So have you ever looked at how much the town, as far as paving and road repair, has lost out on, and versus the $35,000 cost? Because some of the repairs are just not the quality is not there, and the town's going to have to come back and repave. So I think there's a way to do a little negotiating there.
Well, we have gone back to the gas company. They haven't come back to us yet, but this paving that we're talking about for our project is on our property. It's not on town roads.
Well, town roads don't belong to the gas company anyway. So, they're running pipe on town property when they run it on the road. So, again, in this district, District 9 especially, it's been a huge inconvenience. And honestly, I find it really, I don't know, ballsy, if I can even say that, for them to ask us for $35,000. So I will leave it at that. Thank you very much for doing such a good job.
Thank you.
I don't see any other questions on that item, so we'll go to the third one, which is the $135,950 total funds. Yes, the town is looking to replace 311 feet of a 33-inch interceptor at the Metro Center. It goes from the Metro Center to the corner of Kennard and Kenneth, and it's a 33-inch pipe now. What we're looking to do is replace it for a 36-inch line. It's kind of a bottleneck for us in that area. I know we're looking at a lot of development in that area, so we're looking at not only that, but also the upper east trunk line. But this is one aspect of that whole puzzle, sanitary sewer puzzle there. So the town went out for an RFP. We were fortunate enough to receive 3 firms that bid on the project. And we went through an interview process, and we selected D&B engineers and architects for the $135,950. We did extensive background and vetting, and we think that this was the best firm for this project, both cost effectively wise and their ability to bring the project to fruition.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions on this item?
I have a question. Hannah Gale from District 6. Thank you.
Go ahead, Hannah.
Mr. Wharton, I recall being at a zoning board meeting when the plan for the development that's going up behind the trademark, that's going up on coming into the backside of Metro North, was proposed, the one with the hotel and the 4 to 5 buildings that's been approved. And I remember very distinctly that that sewer pipe, that extension coming from Metro North was crucial to that development, and it was supposed to be part of the negotiations with that developer. If you know at all what I'm talking about, like I don't recall that during that those zoning agreements, that was going to be our financial responsibility.
I believe that you're talking about the piece of pipe and that extends through their property.
No, I'm talking, I remember it being exactly where you're discussing, you know, because it has to go up, I can't remember the name of the street, but it has to go up there to where it joins with the other sewage system. And I remember that stretch was being discussed as being partially their responsibility, because it's, I mean, we need the part of the main reason we need to replace it is because of that development.
Well, it's part of that development. But there's other developments going in that side of town too that will also affect. I think Chris Rogers is on the phone. He may be able to shed better light on your question.
Yeah, Chris Rogers,
Thank
sewer
you.
administrator. Yes, the existing line, it was negotiated with the owner of the property. They're going to contribute up to $150,000 to replace that line. That was what was, you know, decided through the WPCA commission.
You all set, Representative Gale?
I just don't recall that that's how it was presented at the zoning board. So I'm just surprised that it's now our financial responsibility.
Okay, are there any other questions? I don't see any, so thank you very much, Mr. Norton. I appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Good night.
Good night. So now we'll go back to Julie DeMarco. Julie, do you have it working now?
I hope so. Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, we hear you.
Oh, thank goodness. Sorry about that.
Technology, right?
Yes. Yeah, we'd love to blame technology. That was a me thing.
Oh. Yeah, if you could just give us a little overview of the bus replacement project for the senior center, that would be great.
I'd love to. Thanks. So you can see from the call, it's for a grant for $56,800, and that's the 80% portion of the state. I mean, that the state grant pays for a bus that we get awarded. So the remaining $1,400 and $14,200, it comes out of our donations. That's the 20%. This bus is it's a 2-year replacement or a 2-year grant cycle. And last year you approved a grant for the bus that we're waiting on now, and that was probably late for me to get that to you, but I hadn't done grants like this before. So this is the time that I should bring it to you when the first select woman approves the acceptance of the grant, which we got. So the bus that will be replaced is a 2011 natural gas bus, which is very costly to repair and very costly to run, and is the only natural gas vehicle left in the entire town fleet. So we're delighted to get rid of that bus. And I know last year, several of you asked what happens to the old buses. I do finally have an answer for you. The purchasing department puts them up for bid, for auction, and we get 1,000 to 2,000 because they're at the end of their useful life, and that money goes into the general fund.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. DeMarco? Representative Georgiadis.
Hi, Julie. Drew Georgiadis, District 9. How are you?
Good. Good, thank you.
I have a question. When you say bus awarded, how does the state determine how many buses we are awarded? Is it based on population? Is it just if you apply for the grant and you have an old bus, they will consider you? How does they determine how many buses are awarded?
Well, we technically could apply for more than one, but traditionally we get one grant. So I do try to replace one every 2 years. Our buses, a lot of our buses aren't that old. You know, the next oldest bus is 2013, which isn't so bad. So that's what we apply for. You know, there's different options about sizes of buses and, you know, maybe a van, something like that in the near future that might be worth trying. But right now, this was a good option for us because our buses are in decent shape. The town takes very good care of them.
Great. The new bus that we approved last year, will it be gas or diesel?
Gas. Regular gas.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? I don't see any. So thank you very much.
Karen,
Who's that?
this is Jeff Steele. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Jeff. Yep.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
Jeff Steele, District 2. Hi, Julie.
Hi, Jeff.
Quick question. How many buses are in the fleet that assists with the senior center? Is it just these two or more?
We have 5 buses, and generally 4 are on the road, and 1 is a backup.
Okay.
We tend to use the one that's backup is the oldest or the most expensive to run.
Okay. And you said 20% is through donations. So what kind of donations are these? Just individual citizen donations? Are they corporate donations? So that's a lot to cover.
It is. We have a donations account that's built up over the years. That's it's individual donations when there's when somebody passes away and somebody requests donations go to. We put in the donations bucket, and it covers it. You know, that the seniors who use the bus are the most vulnerable, and that's generally what people are donating to, is to try to help the most vulnerable of seniors. So I'm comfortable using it. It's traditionally how we've done it, but we do have the money in donations to cover that.
Great. Thank you.
Representative Monahan.
Hi, I'm just wondering about, the future. We're kind of moving away from gas automobiles, moving more toward electric. I think towns, municipalities are all kind of considering this going forward. So are we thinking about eventually going that way? I'm sure there are there's certain incentives, not tax incentives, certain incentives for us to maybe go that route in the future. Is that something that you're kind of thinking about and researching?
I'd love to do that. It's not something for this grant, but as going forward, seniors are less interested in riding the big bus, to go around. They get picked up on a fixed route. So to have something that's on demand, that's smaller, that is, I'd love to do something that's an electric car, since we have the charging station. Electric van, since we have those charging stations. I don't have the answer for you, but I would love to look into that.
Thank you.
Representative Beauvais.
Hi there. That was more or less what I wanted to ask about. They do have bus grants that are for the larger buses. And I was just wondering, is anybody aware of electric bus, low emission, no emission grants that are for the smaller buses, like the on-demand buses we were just talking about?
I don't have that answer. I do know this grant is through the Federal Transit Authority, and they're pretty innovative. We just haven't been there yet. So I suspect that that's something coming down the pike for them. They also work with Greater Bridgeport Transit, so I suspect that that's coming down. I'm not aware of it yet.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Anyone else have a question? Seeing none, thanks so much, Julie, for your time.
Thank you. Sorry
Have
about
a good
the technology.
evening.
You too.
That's okay. Thanks.
See you.
Bye-bye. So next week we will hear from Mr. DeWitt from the Board of Finance about the tax relief for elderly and disabled homeowners ordinance. That's it for this meeting. I want to remind everyone that the phone numbers to call into the committee meetings are on the last page of the agenda for this month's meeting. So we will see you next Monday for the regular meeting. Thank you all.
Thanks,
Good
Karen.
night.